So, in the next slides, I have this, but I want you to put this at the top of your page. So I'm drawing mine horizontally, if you guys want me to.
So, the circulatory system. We'll get into it in the next part, but it's composed of two different actual circuits. So number one is called the systemic circuit. And this is pumps blood to whole body. Then the second circuit that it pumps to is called the pulmonary. The pulmonary circuit. So this pumps back and forth to lungs. So this one, the pulmonary is associated with lungs, and systemic is associated with the body. So think system, that's my whole body, system, and pulmonary, we've done lots of terms that the pulma means like air, so. Okay, so the one piece of paper that I gave you like this is the details of the pulmonary and systemic circuit. But what I'm going to do is going to give you a really simplified version. Okay, so it's, when I simplify things though, sometimes they're not like fully accurate, and I'll tell you what is not accurate, okay? But it's just to have a very simplified visual. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the heart in the middle. Now, there is one, okay, so let's say we have blood in the heart that has oxygen in it. It pumps out through a very special artery called the aorta. So I'm using red because I'm saying this is oxygenated blood and it needs to go to my body. So it pumps out of something called an aorta. Now the aorta will branch off into different arteries. Some of these arteries will go to your head, some will come down to your legs, etc. So we're just going to simplify and say, okay, now this is an artery. And as we go away from the heart, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So this is probably now an arteriole. Now, I'll talk about this later too, but when we go away from the heart, there's a lot of pressure. Our heart is pumping the blood really hard. And so just like a hose that has a lot of pressure, say, coming out of it, if a hose has even more pressure coming out of it, it needs to be strong, right, so that the hose doesn't break or start flailing around. So the arteries in the aorta are very strong and thick in muscle, okay, very strong and thick in muscle. So now say we get down to our arteriole, and then it branches off into a capillary network. So you can just draw kind of a network like so. You can just say capillaries or capillary network. So if this is oxygenated blood leaving the heart, this needs to go to all of our body cells. So this is the oversimplification now. Your sheet showed that it goes to the head and arms, internal organs, and legs. I'm just simplifying it and just writing body cells for all three, okay? So I'm simplifying. All right, so it comes from your body cells. Now your body cells will take oxygen. So now we'll put a little note to ourselves. So we'll say exchange of oxygen from blood to body cells. Blood takes CO2. So the blood delivers oxygen and takes carbon dioxide. So exchange of oxygen from blood to body cells, and blood takes the CO2. So then what happens is after the capillary network has met up with the body cells, now the blood is deoxygenated. Okay? So we can even put a note there. We can say oxygenated blood. And here is deoxygenated blood. So when I say body cells, remember I mean head and arms, legs, internal organs. So now all of these, this is also a capillary network. But all of those capillaries will now meet up together in another little vessel, but now this is called a venule, a tiny vein. So notice how venule and arteriole, they're both tiny things of the root word. So an arteriole is a tiny artery. A venule is a tiny vein. So now it's going to branch off and get bigger, and now it will be called a vein. Now, veins go toward the heart. Now, not all veins are deoxygenated, which I will explain next. But there's a very special vein that goes back to the heart that came from the body. Very special. It is called the vena cava. So it is a special type of vein that delivers the blood from the body to the heart. Okay, so any questions about this? Which one is this, the systemic circuit or the pulmonary circuit? Systemic. So this side of our sheet we can declare is our systemic circuit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the pulmonary circuit on this side. Now that doesn't mean that the pulmonary circuit only exists on your right side of your body. Again, it's a simplification, okay? All right, so now we need to go to the lungs because our blood came back to the heart and now it's deoxygenated. So where does our blood get oxygen? From the lungs. So it's like, and again, simplification, this goes through the heart, and now we're going to go away from the heart again. And it's still, I'm still using blue because I know that it's still deoxygenated blood. But what classifies identifies as a vessel going away from the heart, an artery, okay? So this specifically is going to be called the pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery, because it's associated with the pulmonary circuit. So isn't that interesting? We have arteries, but they're deoxygenated. So it more is associated with, you just remember arteries away, veins toward, and then you have to think about if it's going to be oxygenated or not. Now, do you think that these arteries need to be as strong as the aorta? Because they're both arteries. I said arteries have to be really strong, lots of muscle. What say you? Sure? Okay. Well, for here, thank you for at least giving an answer. For here, it has to go to our whole body, right? We said our head down to our feet. Here, though, it only has to go to the lungs. It's right close, right? Our lungs are right beside our heart. So the pulmonary artery does not have to be as strong because it's just delivering some stuff to its neighbor. It's not like having to drive to Edmonton. This is like having to drive to Edmonton. It takes a lot more. This is just going to your neighbor's house, okay? So our pulmonary artery is not as thick, which meaning, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, there's going to be one side of the heart that is not as thick in muscle because it doesn't have to pump it as hard. And I'll show you that in a minute, okay? So we have our pulmonary artery. It branches down into what? What is it called when an artery branches into something smaller? Arterial. So we have an arterial here. Now again, our arterial branches into capillary network. And it's going to meet up with something, and on the other side, be oxygenated. So what meets up, what does the vessels meet up with? The alveoli, right? We've already talked about this. Very good. So here, and I'll draw little balls to represent the alveoli. So these are alveoli. Remember, the capillary network is like wrapped around them. Okay, so we have our alveoli. So again, we have gas exchange. So we have gas exchange, and we can say, what's going on here? We have O2 delivered from alveoli to blood. So oxygen delivered from alveoli to blood. And then what else do we need to drop off? It's our CO2. So then CO2 delivered from blood to alveoli, because we need to get rid of that CO2, so we're going to put it in the alveoli so we can exhale it out. Okay, so then all of this capillary network will meet up together. Now, what are we going? Are we going back to the heart or away from the heart at this point? Come on. I need to go back to the heart. So this is then a what? Artery or vein? A venule specifically, yes. So I have a venule. And then it branches off into a larger vein. but this one is specifically called a pulmonary vein. And then look, this pulmonary vein is going to somehow have to cross over the heart and go to the aorta and deliver all of that oxygenated blood to the body. So then this is called the pulmonary circuit. Okay. So the whole reason for having these circuits is because we need oxygenated blood to our body, and we need to get that oxygen from our lungs. Now, we've got a bit of a problem. So any questions actually first? Good so far? So we got a bit of a problem here. There's our heart. We got oxygenated blood that needs to leave the heart and go to the body, and we have deoxygenated blood that's coming to the heart to go to the lungs. So the heart is the place that just basically transports blood. You know, like, but why is it so important when our heart stops beating? Why?
Because we're not getting oxygen delivery.
Yeah, we're not getting oxygen delivered. So, you know, when you think about it, it's kind of interesting. Our heart is just a muscle that keeps moving so that it can deliver things. It's just the delivery system, you know? So it's just the delivery system, but it's so important because we need that oxygen. So we have a problem in our heart because we have, essentially, if we looked at it just the way that I have it here, we could potentially have what kind of problem going on? How do I make sure that the oxygenated blood goes to my body and not back to my lungs? Or that the deoxygenated blood goes back to my body? Because what if it all got mixed together? And the blue went that way. Can I mix it? Why not? Why can't I mix it together? Why can't I have the blue blood going this way?
Because we need oxygen to send to your body.
Yeah. So how do I prevent that?
Valves.
Yes. Valves and chambers. Yes. So our heart needs to have chambers so that there's not mixing, and we need valves so there's not backflow into the chambers. Good. Okay? So this is the big picture. Now we're going to zoom in on the heart specifically and talk about those chambers and those valves. Okay? So let's go back to our notes and read briefly about the heart.